Well, I hesitate doing these videos because it sounds like a bunch of complaining. And, obviously everybody watching this knows that right now Georgia's the number one team in the country. They go into a big game with the Gators, which is, traditionally their number one game of the year, most important game of the year, obviously their biggest rival. It was curious, though, to listen this week and get the pulse of everyone nationally. They are definitely still very much in love with what's happened at Neyland Stadium in Knoxville a couple of weeks ago. It's what we're calling the Lavender Haze. And if you've never watched Mad Men, well, you've never watched the greatest television show of all time. So you've been told. But it's a phrase from Mad Men about when the main character has fallen in love with someone, and the main character falls in love with a lot of people, frankly. And anyway, when he hits Lavender Haze, he can't think clearly. And here's actually Taylor Swift wrote a song about this lately, and she said, "If you're in the lavender haze, that meant you were in an all-encompassing love glow." And I thought that was really beautiful. And that's where we've been with the Vols since they beat Alabama. And this is not a video running down Tennessee. That's not what this is. It is just that this is a discussion about where we are right now. This is a criticism of the way that those of us that do what I do for a living fall in love with one particular thing when there have been 7 games played. We do this. Those of us who've gone to college know what it's like to really be, head over heels, perhaps for somebody that really isn't that great. Or, it's a fun thing in that moment, and that's it. It's not more than that. It's just that thing. It could also mean that there's more to it, or maybe there's not, Um, I think we're in the lavender haze with the Vols right now, and whether that will stop, I don't know. But I'll tell you this: as well as Tennessee played, they beat Alabama the last time they played them. Georgia beat Alabama the last time they played them. It didn't come down to the last field goal, and Alabama couldn't have won it on the last play of the game like they did with the Vols. But they could have. Georgia won the last time they played Alabama too. You can pick up our copy of DAWGSTRUCTION. Make sure that you're picking it up before the holidays. Awesome holiday gift, that's for sure. For Christmas, I don't know if it's a stocking stuffer, but if you have a Georgia fan in your family and you don't get that for them, anyway, when you look back at that win for the Vols, they played really well in the first half, and then they didn't. And then, kind of, I think that Alabama kind of caught up to them, and then they went toe to toe. But when you get down 18 or whatever it was that Alabama was down, the rest of the game is going to be close. If you come back, you might get blown out. Alabama doesn't ever get blown out, y'all. Let's just be honest. I mean, Georgia beat them by 15. That was not a blowout. Um, but that win has proven to give the Vols a ton of capital in our world, in the world of media. Now, listen, if you're just someone who hates the media, that's fine. That's not what this is, though. I mean, I understand the media in a very, I would say, intimate way, in a very acute way, in a way that it's paid for everything I've gotten over the last 20 plus years. This is not a media hate. This is a media criticism. And it's hard to watch Georgia play 7 complete games. The Vols play 7 complete games. Ohio State play, I think they played 8 games. Tennessee may well have played 8 as well. I think, though, the Vols were off. If I'm not mistaken, the Vols were off between LSU and Alabama. They were not. They had an off week before. Okay, yeah, before LSU. I knew it was something in there. Um, to some degree, it feels like folks have forgotten about the Dogs. I mean, I know that won't be the case in 7 days. I am well aware that will not be the case in 7 days. But this is kind of what we do, you know. we fall in love with what's happening in that moment, a shiny object, and right now that shiny object is orange or orange. Um, and I think Tennessee is well deserving of the situation they're in. I would not rank them in front of Georgia and Ohio State personally. And part of my job is to talk about what my opinion is, and that is my opinion. And if you look at Las Vegas, they have a very similar opinion, which is that as good as Tennessee's been, they're going to be a double digit. Well, they're going to open as a double digit dog to Georgia on the road. They should be a dog to Georgia. Okay, that just should be, whether it's at Neyland or at Georgia. How much a dog is a good question. When you look at odds to win the national championship, they are sitting there with like Clemson and Michigan. Those three teams are all around the same time. So Tennessee's already played Alabama. They basically have a game against Georgia and perhaps the SEC championship game. They can actually lose to the Dogs and still win the national championship. They can't get killed. I mean, I don't think they're going to get killed. I do think they'll lose to Georgia. I don't think they're going to get killed, and they can win. Um, but to move them in front of the Dogs right now, there's been some discussion of them being the number one team in the country. No, and here's why. Because when you have the options that are, well, really there are three other options besides the Vols. The Vols are definitely a top four team. I can assure you of that. Um, but Michigan, Ohio State, and Georgia have had probably the best overall seasons. Michigan did not go into overtime with Pitt. Michigan did not struggle on the road at Missouri. Michigan did not goof around with Notre Dame at home in the season opener. I mean, okay. They also did not kill Oregon the way Georgia did. They did not kill South Carolina the way that Georgia did. They have not throttled everybody. They throttled most people. They had not throttled everybody. They should throttle Michigan State this week. When you look at Ohio State, both Ohio State and Michigan, I think it's great that Penn State. We talk about Penn State. Penn State is nothing. I mean, let's just be honest. They are what's the uh, they are Mississippi. They are the Rebels. They are something like that. And there are times they look good, and then they just get throttled. I mean, Michigan beat their skulls in. So Ohio State will do something very similar, I think. Now, the caveat there is when Ohio State goes to Happy Valley, sometimes that game's a little trickier than it should be. 16, that was the case. 18, that was the case. I think in 20, I can't remember. But 14, 16, 18, and 20, Ohio State had one convincing win at Happy Valley. So there you go. But um, and then you look at Tennessee's schedule, and there's not a lot to hate on, but they only beat the Gators by 5, right? And then and Florida outplayed them in that first half. I mean, I think Tennessee had a 3-point lead, but Florida outplayed them in that first half. And of course that only matters so much because Missouri outplayed Georgia, right? And then, but it's an overtime deal with Pitt. Like that's the thing that I mean, like Georgia has not come within a play of losing since the Alabama game. And before that, it was the Florida game in 20. So not that matters to this thing, but Pittsburgh, nah, they're not good. I mean, they beat West Virginia by a touchdown. West Virginia is bad. They lost to Tennessee by a touchdown. Excuse me, in overtime by a touchdown. They lost to Georgia Tech. Now Georgia Tech's bad, okay, and then they lost to Louisville. Louisville's not good. Now they ain't Tech bad, but they're not. So, you're looking at a West Virginia team that is got 3 losses. So they're 4-3, and it was a road game for the Vols and everything. But like we can't be in the lavender haze about Tennessee's win over Alabama when the Tide missed a game-winning kick with like under a minute to go. I mean, they didn't just dismantle Alabama. That doesn't happen. It doesn't seem. So this is as close as we've seen dismantling Alabama. When's the last time LSU? I guess in when is the last time Alabama lost by double digits? Let's just go back and see. They lost by a field goal kick uh, against Tennessee, right? All right. In 2021, obviously they lost to Georgia. They lost the game to. I'm trying to get down to it. Good God. They lost to Texas A&M by a field goal. Okay, on the last play of the game. In 2020, they didn't lose. In 2019, LSU really throttled them, but the final score was much closer than them getting throttled. They lost by three. Excuse me, by five. And then Auburn beat them, I think, on the last play of the game, 48-45. 2018, Clemson kicked their brains in. So Clemson beat their skulls in, and that was a second half beating, frankly. And that was 44-16. I think that game at the half was I mean, you could tell Clemson was the better team, but you couldn't. I mean, I didn't think they could get beat like that. I mean, that was bad. Let me see what the score was at the half. It was 28. Yeah, I mean, it was no, that's 31-16, I think it was. So you could tell that, you could tell that was really more about the middle part of the game because Clemson had a 1 point lead after the first quarter, and then they outscored them. What is that, 30-3 the rest of the way? So that's how long ago it's been since someone beat them by double digits. And Georgia just did that, right? I mean, just did that. So what is a good win? Does a field goal win at the end propel you through the lavender haze? It does. It does. And I think that's the part to me that's a little bit um everything in college football is about perception until people play on the field. And I think it's okay to disagree with someone. My view is that David Pollock is correct about this. That Georgia is probably the best overall team in the country. I think they're better than Tennessee personally. We'll see, because there's going to be a lot that Tennessee can do. But boy, the defense has to play for Tennessee as well. It's not just their offense, and that's the part of the Lavender Haze everybody's forgetting.